Good morning. I'm going to try again to upload this Google Hangout to walk through the methodology assignment for you. I apologize that I haven't been able to do it before this week. I've had some really difficult internet connections, but hopefully we'll get it done today. So we have two assignments this week, the first of which is the methodology assignment. I'm going to just go into my screen share mode so that you can see that. And, I'm in Moodle under the methodology section, and I think the assignment's fairly straightforward, but let's walk through the separate components. There are four main categories that you need to be aware of, and within those categories there are some subheadings or categories that you probably should pay attention to. As with all of the assignments, when you're given subheadings, I would suggest that you design and organize your assignment using those headings. That way it's easy for us to find what it is that we're looking for, and it's easy for you to get points for each section of the rubric. So let's walk through the assignment. The first of the categories is the reflexivity. And the reflexivity really is a fairly brief statement, a few sentences that outlines you in terms of the research that you're doing. And if you scroll further down in the assignment, you'll see a description which I think is fairly straightforward, but the reflexivity really does have to do with positioning yourself and to talk about where you're coming from in terms of the research, what your experience is, why you might choose this research, and why you might be somebody who would be able to conduct this research quite well. And there's an example there that you can see that I've included that really just outlines the fairly simple position statement that you're going to make. The second category is your purpose statement, and for this you can return to your research and topic question that we did earlier in the course, and really you're looking for a single statement here that really talks about the purpose of the study. Again, I've given you an example here, but you really want to be able to clarify a precise purpose for what it is that you're studying. The reason we do this is because you've now finished your review of literature, and so you may have refocused your question. Your question may have changed. There may be a slightly new emphasis that you're looking at, and so it's beneficial then to restate your purpose prior to going into your data collection. So the third section is the data collection section, and there are multiple elements to this. Again, you can see them here. I think I've outlined them for you fairly straightforwardly. Number one, what data will you study? In other words, who are your participants? What data are you going to collect? How are you going to set it up? Number two, how are you going to collect it? Number three, how often and how long will the study be? For some of you, it may be a one-time collection. For some of you, it may be a pre- and post-survey collection. Some longitudinal studies go on for years, and so it'll be important for you to determine how long you're going to collect the data. And then lastly, how you're going to organize it and how you're going to record it. Each of these subheadings, and I would write them as subheadings, really needs to be fairly precise. And this is the technical element, and in order for you to demonstrate that you understand the statistical nature of the research that you're going to complete, it's quite important that you are fairly specific regarding these questions. Now, for some of you, the research process will be an evolution, and so you're not exactly sure where it will go, and it's okay for you to state that, but attempt to be as concise and as precise as you can with this particular section. The last section that you're going to look at is your data analysis, and again, within the data analysis, there are a series of subheadings. Obviously, the first of which is quite literally, how are you going to analyze the data? How are you going to reflect upon it? How are you going to read about it? You can report on the statistics, many tables and graphs. You won't have collected your data, obviously, because we didn't do that part, but if you want to, you can, some people include imaginary statistics or tables and graphs just to show how they might present the information they've collected. The other subheadings, really quite important. The validity and reliability, in other words, how valid is your study, how reliable is your study, are the instruments that you're using worthwhile, how do you know that they'll give you the information and the credibility that you need. Secondly, ethical concerns. What are the ethical concerns? You will have completed your IRB, but for many of you, there'll be a number of ethical concerns for your research, and those aren't necessarily serious concerns, but they're looking at maybe collecting information from students, from children, from patients, and so we have to make sure that we outline exactly what we know that our concerns will be. And then lastly, the limitations of the studies. All research has a limitation, and we need to know what ours are. How can you apply your study to other studies? How can you design and think about framing your questions in the best possible way? But that being said, how do they apply to other people? How useful are they? And how limited is your particular study? For some of you, you'll be doing case studies, which are really quite limited in nature, but others of you will be doing broader research and obviously might apply to a number of different aspects of education or counseling. So now the second assignment is the IRB form, and I'm back on the main page and we've just gone into the IRB form. The IRB form is really fairly straightforward, and I would suggest that the first thing you do is go to the Cornell sample forms, which are included. There's 3 links here on the page. If you go to the IRB Cornell form, you'll actually see the sample form, and I would start by using that. I would pull that in, and then using that as a template, I would modify and change what I need to make sure that I meet the needs of my particular research. You're not going to need probably all of the components. You'll certainly need to make some changes, but predominantly the form will be very similar. I've also given you a link here to the Bonaventure IRB forms, so you can see there some of the examples that might be used at Bonaventure, and again another template that you've got that you could use. Really, the IRB form is fairly straightforward. You don't need to worry too much about the details of it in terms of creating something from scratch. The purpose here is for you to demonstrate that you understand the need for an IRB form, you understand the importance of it, and that you can take forms or samples that you have and be able to use those by modifying them to meet your specific needs. And that's one of the key things that I'll be looking for when that form comes in. Have you taken a standardized form? Have you made it your own? And have you applied it to your own research? So those 2 assignments are what we have on for this week, and you'll be delighted to know that I think that will really break the back of the course for the vast majority of you. Next week we will be putting together the research final paper, which really will be taking those assignments that you've already completed and putting them together into a research paper study. We'll formalize the references, we'll add contents and abstracts and a title page, and we should be done and good to go, and I'm sure you'll be delighted to get this course behind you. One thing that I would say that you should be aware of, I've now given you feedback on your review of the literature, and you'll get feedback on your methodologies as soon as they come in. Make sure you read through that feedback. For some of you, I've suggested changes. It would be a good idea to make those changes prior to you handing in the final report, because then you'll, if you've lost points this time around, you won't lose them next time around if you've made those changes. So think about editing and going back and looking over your review of the literature this weekend maybe, and then once you get your methodology back, you can do the same thing again for next week prior to turning in on the 12th. Hopefully it's been a good week for you. This will give you some guidance, I'm hoping. I apologize for the lateness of it, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon next week. Nearly done, guys. Hang in there.